Hello, y'all, and welcome to the week 3 class meeting. Thank y'all so much for giving me your time today. I really, really appreciate it. No problem, Miss Quantanisha. I totally understand. Thank you for letting me know. Today we are going to get into chapter 26, the medicine chapter. I know that's kind of been throwing some of y'all off. They're throwing administration codes at you, which is not something we're used to dealing with. So we're going to get into depth. We're going to go in depth on that and how to code that correctly. Okay. So we're going to do some practical practice from your chapter exercises, and that's going to be on page 666. Chapter exercise 26-1. I've got a slide that we're going to get started on in a minute. But before we do that, I want to talk to y'all a little bit about it. Okay, so the immunization codes. There's a certain set of 8,000 codes that cover your immunizations, right? 8,000 and 9,000 codes, depending. But whenever the physician gives an immunization of any kind, they have to not only code the medicine, but they also have to code the administration, or what we like to call the stick or the poke, okay? The actual procedure of breaking skin and shooting that medicine in, okay? So we got to code the medicine and the procedure, the poke, right? We got to do both of those. And in some cases, if the patient is not there specifically for that immunization, if they happen to get an immunization during a regular office visit, then you'll have an additional code to add in. You'll have what's called an E&M code, or your evaluation and management code, which is going to be anywhere 99201 or 012, 99202. These are all your office codes, and they, again, range from, depending on the medical decision making or the time spent in the visit, is going to depend on your E&M code. Most of y'all have not covered that yet, so I'm not going to get too deep into E&M codes. Most everybody on here is new, and we did E&M several months ago. So we will wrap back around and y'all will get the whole understanding of E&M, but just understand that if the immunization was not the reason for the visit, you will need an E&M code to accompany that. And there is, I want to let y'all know, a lovely little chart that lays out your E&M codes in the beginning of your CPT manual. And that is on page, I actually, guys, because it's something I use so much, it's one of the things I made on a tabby. It's just a reference thing, but it's super handy. So I put it on a tabby, E&M codes. And that's page, is before the page numbers even start. Like I said, it's just reference. XXVI, whatever that Roman numeral stands for, very beginning of the book, is where you can find all those E&M codes, okay? All right, so, but back to the immunizations and the administrations. Okay, fortunately, I have a little bit of experience with the immunization things because I did some contract coding work, coding and billing for an urgent care last year when the monkeypox vaccine, when monkeypox became a thing, and all of a sudden there's a vaccine. Well, guess what? There was no code for the monkeypox vaccine until July 25th of 2022. I think was the day I got the update that, hey, we have a code, we can bill this now. So sometimes if it's something that's new and emerging, it may not be in your CPT manual. You may have to check the AMA's website, okay? And you can also find updates there as well. Super handy website to keep bookmarked, okay? All right, but so the administration, I got to know the ins and outs of these administration codes pretty well. Now, there are about 4 or 5 different administration codes. I think maybe 4. In the first set, there's a set of 2 that are for adults, and then there's a set of 2 that are for ages 18 and under. And the reason for that is because if a physician gives an immunization to someone who is 18 years or under, they are also supposed to give a consultation to that person's parent, guardian, legal representative, whatever the case may be, right? The person responsible for that technically non-adult, that child, right? So that's included in the code. That consultation with the parent or guardian is, and that's why there's 2 different codes, because they assume that anyone over the age of 18, they do not have to have that consult with. They know what they're there for and what they're doing, and they understand what they're getting, basically. But with patients 18 and under, there is a specific code set for the administration just for them. All right. And when you're coding the immunization, let's say they have more than one. The first code in the set is for a single vaccination or immunization. Okay. The second one is for 2 or more vaccinations. So you're going to code your first vaccine in the administration code. You're going to code your second vaccine, and then you'll code the 2 or more code that matches, right? For administration, administering 2 or more. The first one is I administered this one, and the second one is I administered more than just that one. I administered this also, and so on and so forth. And depending on your payer, some payers want you to put an administration code for each immunization that you perform, and some payers will accept, like, I think it's 40972, and you can put times whatever, how many ever immunizations you gave at that time. Excuse me. But that's payer specific. For our purposes, I'll let y'all code it either way, because either way is correct. Either way is correct. One administration code per immunization, or the code that's for multiple times how many ever you're doing. Okay. Any questions on that? I imagine some of y'all do, because I don't feel like that was extremely clear. But on page, how did I get several pages? Page 664 in your textbook. And while y'all are reading, y'all pay attention to the examples that they give, because they are gold. They really do a great job of explaining what you just read. They lay it out for you, okay, in these examples. And on the top of page 664, there's a really good one where they coded 2 different immunizations. So you've got your administration code, your immunization, your multiple administration code, and then your second immunization. And it really lays it out for you. And also, I want to point out too that when I talk about payer specific, what I mean by that is the insurance company or whoever you're sending that claim to, that's your payer. So it could be an insurance company like Blue Cross Blue Shield, or it could be Medicare. And Medicare and Medicaid are their own animals. They have specific codes and specific rules, and Medicare even has, y'all will get your coding manuals, you notice a HCPCS manual. That's specifically Medicare codes. Only Medicare codes. Some of the codes that we use normally, we can send off to an insurance company, and for Medicare, we can't use those same codes. We have to use their HCPCS codes if they have one for it. Medicare standards, they are their own ball game, but they are the biggest insurer in the country. They are what you're going to deal with the most. And if you are really good with Medicare coding and Medicare billing, that's money. That's money. Medicare specialists are highly sought after and get paid well. So if you can, you want to hone in on that, if you're after the bucks, if that's why you're here, learn the Medicaid. or Medicare and Medicaid, but mostly Medicare. But anytime you see a little box that says CMS rules in your textbook, that is referring specifically to Medicare's rules for whatever we're discussing. So if you want to get good at that, pay special attention to those CMS rules blurbs in your textbook. Okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our practical practice. I'm going to share my screen. And those of y'all that can, are able to follow along, please do, and feel free to unmute yourselves and, ask questions, answer questions, whatever you think you need to do, or whatever you're comfortable with, I should say. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
I'm a little, aw. It's only 2 slides. It'll be really quick today. Okay, so again, chapter exercise 26-1, which I think may have been in your lab assignment for yesterday. Page 600. Okay, it's page 666. But I just don't feel comfortable putting that on my slides. Call me superstitious, spiritual, religious, whatever you want to call me. I saw 666 on my slide and I was like, they'll find it if they go to 667 because it's the opposite.
And it's showing up at 665 on mine, so I don't know.
Is it? So there you go. There you go. Maybe a little bit different in the electronic version because I have a paper book that I go off of. Which also I don't know if y'all know this, but if you prefer paper textbooks, you can order them from the company that makes the ebooks, but they do cost, and Unitech does not cover that cost. So if you want to, you have the choice to order the paper copy of the book if you want it.
Yeah, I ordered mine from eBay for $43.
Ma'am?
I said I ordered mine from eBay for $43 because I don't like ebooks.
There you go. There you go. That will work. I didn't know they had them on there. That's awesome. Okay, so let's look at our first example. And this is going to be, again, page 666, 26-1. A parent takes a 9-year-old child to the child's physician for a poliomyelitis vaccine, IM. The physician's assistant evaluates the child. They are an established patient and administers the vaccine to the child. What CPT codes? And even spells it out for you. CPT codes. You're going to have one for said vaccine, and then you're going to have one for the administration of said vaccine. All right. So have y'all, has anybody already worked through these and have their answers handy?
I have my well, some of them anyways. I think I looked up their vaccine. I can't remember what I looked at. I have to look at it, but I have the answer. I just gotta tell you how I got it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The answer is 90713.
That's correct. That's the first CPT code, right?
But in the way I got it, I think it's vaccination, polio. Poliovirus. I just know that means intermuscular. And so I, double checked in the book, but I pretty much knew that was 90713.
Awesome. Yes, that is correct. And guys, it's really easy that for my newer folks, your first step when you're finding these CPT codes in your manual, when you get your manual, there's an alphabetic index. It's a really thick section at the back of the book, and you start there. And if you look up poliovirus vaccine in there, it'll lead you to the section in the book where the codes are. We call that the tabular index. Okay. And it'll lead you, your alphabetic index will lead you to your tabular. It'll tell you what code, and then you need to go into the tabular and verify that that is the correct code. You don't ever stop at the alphabetic index. Never, ever, no matter what you're coding, never. You always double verify in the tabular, because there's stuff in the tabular that they don't put in the alphabetic index that may change the code. Okay, so that is correct. Poliovirus vaccine 90713. And what did you get for the administration code, Ms. Courtney?
Well, I had to Google that because I'm still having a difficult time finding how to get to the administrative codes, but I got 90471, but I just need you to run it down again, how you find the code, the
Not a
administration code.
problem.
Okay.
Not a
I
problem.
feel like I'm in medical school, actually. I mean, I was looking at this stuff and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like we're in medical school.
Medical school, yeah. And some of it, that's why I think last week I had a few videos on medical terminology, because it's just sometimes it's just a lot, right? It's a little overwhelming. All right, so those codes. All right, in the pathology and laboratory section of your CPT manual, which starts on page 575. Ow, that was my shoulder. Okay. I'm seeing if it's in the index.
What would we be looking for in the index? Physician evaluation?
It'd be administration.
Administration.
But I don't see it listed in the section, you know, the first page of the section where they list all the subsections. I'm not seeing it there. But if you go, that's funny. I used this page so much, I spilled something on it, it's sticky in my book. All right, so it starts on page 722. There's a vaccines and toxoids subsection, okay? And it starts on page 722, and they give you the guidelines. And you remember the guidelines are at the beginning of some subsections and sections, there's a page that's just a lot of writing, and it's usually like a green box or maybe green writing, something like that. But those are the coding guidelines for that section or subsection, depending on what you're working on. Okay, so vaccines and toxoids start on 722.
So we would just need to know that, or is there a way to find that in the index?
I'm pretty sure if you look, did you look for administration?
I looked, maybe I didn't, but I thought I looked.
Let's see,
Administration.
let me see if I can
Let
find
me look
it
again. You don't have to.
alphabetically.
And, okay, administration, immunizations, each additional vaccine, toxoid.
There you go.
Okay. So anything that's any type of administration, is this only for vaccines? When it's an administration, it's an injection or of medicine?
It is particularly for vaccines and toxoids.
Okay. I got you.
Now, I do see under administration where they have immunization, and then it indents down and gives you a couple of options. But under immunization, it also says occlusive substance and pharmacologic agent. So I'm going to go ahead and assume right there that there are other instances, not just immunizations, where you have to use an administration code, but you could go to those particular codes, the 31634 and the 93463, and read their guidelines in their section, and it would tell you if you had to use it or not. But we know for the immunizations, we have to. So yeah, each additional with counseling, remember the with counseling is for those under the age of 18. All right, so where they spell out how you code this stuff is in those guidelines. Like I said, page 722. And they also list in here which codes you have, which code sets you have to use it for, how to use it, and then they give specifics, okay, on all the code sets. It's just the guidelines tell you everything you need to know. They spell it out for you on how to code. But if you go to page okay. Page 720 starts your administrations with 90460, okay? And you see 90460, for those of y'all that are following along. Immunization administration through 18 years of age via any route with counseling by physician or other qualified healthcare professional, first or only component of each vaccine or toxoid administered. So that means when they say first and only component of each vaccine or toxoid administered, they mean you are only going to use that code for the first vaccine that you administer, the first vaccine that is given. You use the 90460. And you see right under it is there's a plus symbol, 90461. Each additional vaccine or toxoid component administered lists separately in addition to code for primary procedure. Okay, so what that says is anytime we give a second vaccine or more, we're going to list 90461 with each of the vaccines that we administer. All right. And that is for those under 18. Immunization administration through 18 years old. Okay, and then it says 90471 is your immunization administration, and they give you several different routes or methods of giving intramuscular injection, subcutaneous, one vaccine, single or combined. It does not say anything about counseling. It doesn't give any other age limits or anything like that. That's just the code for your first vaccine for a grown-up person, right? And then right under it, it's the 90472 with the little plus symbol, which is going to be for your second vaccine and on for people over the age of 18. Right. There are a couple more, like one for immunization administration by intranasal or oral route, single or combined. And there's an add-on for a second one for that. And that's pretty much it. Those are the ones y'all are going to use the most. The other ones are real vaccine specific, like COVID and stuff like that, and changes that have come in the last couple of years. But so yes, that's correct. Because it's a 9-year-old patient, it's going to be 904. 90461. I'm sorry, you had said 71, huh, Courtney?
Yes, I did. So because it's a 9-year-old patient, it's 90461?
Correct.
Okay.
And I just realized something too. our book has it wrong, has the answer listed wrong. I don't know if y'all know this, but the chapter exercises, if y'all ever get stuck on something and you need to work backwards, the answers are in the back of the book, in Appendix B. And I'm looking at the answer here, and they have also 90471,
Right,
but that's not correct. It's gonna
okay.
be actually 90460, because it was the first vaccine given to someone under the age of 18. It's gonna be 90460, not 90471. So gotta watch the book sometimes too. All right, any questions about that?
I figured the book was smarter than me, so,
Not always. Y'all gotta remember the books are written by humans too.
right,
And that's not actually the first error that I have found in the coding in the last year. So y'all just don't always, double check your stuff. Double check your stuff. But them providing the answers, and it's never been far off either. It's not been some crazy error. But if y'all want to work backwards, that's a great way to learn it, is to work backwards and see how they got that. You know what I'm saying? All right, so let's look at the second one. And this one was number 2. Somehow my number got lost from there. An established patient, 10 years old. The only service for the visit is an injection of DTP, or diphtheria, tetanus, toxoid, pertussis, and poliovirus. Services were provided by the nurse at the direction of the physician. Okay, so, and they're asking for CPT codes, one for DTP vaccine, and then a second one for the poliovirus vaccine, and then the administrations. So let's work on our vaccines first. Since they spell it out for us nice and easy, I would just look for those in the alphabetic index, DTP, or you probably want to look vaccines, and then it'll indent down and give you a list of different vaccines, and it'll lead you to the code you need to check. One of the biggest things about that throws people off in coding is picking the keyword. But y'all will hear me say, like, over and over again, there are multiple ways to skin a cat. There are multiple ways to get to a code. Okay, you could start with 2 completely different words and get to the correct code, just a different route. So don't stress if you pick a word and you follow that through the CPT book and it doesn't get you to where you need to be. Just pick a different word and start over. I always tell my students that I start with the word that I don't know. That's usually the key word, is the medical term that I'm just not familiar with. That's probably what I need to be looking up. All right, so can anybody give me the code for DTP vaccine?
well, at first I had 90700, and then when I checked in the book, it gave me 90715. So, I guess the age is what changed the code, because one is for younger than 7 and the other one is for older than 7. So I think it's 90715.
You're absolutely correct. You're correct.
Okay.
The code is different for the age of the patient on some of the immunizations. And good job being thorough and reading the little definition and figuring out that they were talking about different age groups. A lot of people, that's why I say, read the definition, look at all the little signs and symbols around. It could change it. And that's why that's a perfect example of why we always verify in the tabular, because we think it's one thing, but it turns out there's a better option to fit what we're coding. So that's perfect, 90715. All right. And we had just talked about that polio virus, that 90713 from number 1. So guess what? Same thing, polio virus vaccine, 90713. All right, so what are our administration codes going to look like? What administration code are we going to be using for the DTP vaccine, the one that was given first?
So we're gonna go to administration.
Mm-hmm. For the
And-
first vaccine for the diphtheria, for the
So
DTP.
that will be 90472 or 90471.
Nope, it'll actually be the 90460 because it was the first one. And
With counseling?
the patient, right, the patient's 10 years old. So they're under 18, so we got to use the 90460 for the first vaccine. Which
So, Ms.
means,
Brady,
So,
we have to
so even if they
assume
didn't
that-
get counseling? Oh, sorry.
we have to assume that they get counseling no matter what, even if it says counseling or not.
yes, if they are under the age of 18, that doctor is supposed to give that counseling,
Okay.
no matter what, to the
Okay.
parent or guardian. And that's why it's included in that code.
So that's 904, what was the code?
60 for the first vaccine.
So even if it doesn't say with counseling, anytime they get a vaccination and they're under the age of 18, they get counseling every time, even if it's the second dose?
Regardless of what dose, anytime someone under the age of 18 is given any type of immunization, their parent or guardian has to be counseled.
Okay,
That's just the rule. So they're gonna, I want to say it's actually a law that when you're giving an immunization to someone under the age of 18, you have to explain to the parent or the guardian what it's for, why you're giving it, all that stuff. Any side effects. Children are not expected to understand that type of information. So if the rule is you give them the counseling, and that's why it's included in the code. Like there are some counseling sessions that are coded separately, but in this particular instance, it's included in this code because that's the rule of thumb that the doctor is supposed to follow. So yeah, even if it doesn't say that there was any counseling done, it's age dependent. If they're under 18, we gotta assume it was done. All right, so for the poliovirus vaccine, since we use the 90460, our second one for the poliovirus is gonna be the 90461, which is each additional vaccine. Y'all have good.
so only difference between 90461 and 90472 is the age, just so okay.
Yep, it's just the age. Yep. And you'll find a lot of things like that when there's an age, when something affects a younger person differently than it affects an older person or something like that, you will find that there are codes for a certain age range. And especially like when you're doing, if you go to work for a OBGYN or anything like that, you're doing coding for pregnant patients, you'll have codes, they'll have 3 different codes for the same thing, one for the first trimester, one for the second trimester, and then one for the third trimester. There'll be 3 different codes for the same thing, but it's dependent on which trimester the patient is in. So yeah, things like age, what trimester they're in, where they're at with certain things can also play a part in the coding. That's why it's really important to read the definitions and understand the differences between the codes so that you can pick the right one for your situation. Excellent question. Excellent question. All right, so let's go on to the last one we're going to look at, which was number 4 in the list. And it was, let's go back. A 64-year-old established patient comes in for, and my little screen thing's only gets in the way, comes in for a trivalent influenza virus vaccine, 0.5 mils, that is administered intramuscularly by the nurse. The vaccine is the only service provided at that visit. All right, so the vaccine was the only reason they came to that visit. So that means no E&M code. And I know in this same chapter exercise, the questions further down did ask for E&M codes. So for those of y'all that have not been through the E&M code section yet, if you want to, give it a go, give it a try. Like I said, they're found there's that reference sheet in the beginning of the book that y'all could, I'm willing to bet y'all could figure it out pretty easily. But again, we'll cover that material at a later date. So just do the best you can with that, guys. I don't know if y'all have noticed or not, but I do not nitpick my grading. Like I really do not nitpick. If you are in the area where you're supposed to be and you're close, you'll get more accurate with time. So I'm not taking points off of anything you get wrong. Give it your best shot. And when we cover that material, if it's still not crystal clear for you, then we'll get more in depth. But in the meantime, just give it a shot and don't stress about it, okay? We'll get there. All right, so we got a 64-year-old patient with a flu shot. Anybody know what CPT code we're gonna go with for that?
$90658.
Ding ding, we have a winner. That is correct. That is correct. 90658. Vaccines, influenza. So you looked under vaccine in your alphabetic index and then indented down to your list and you found influenza. And you got there. All right, and what about our administration for our 64-year-old patient?
90471.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got that right because it's over the age of 10 or
Yeah.
18. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's right. You got it. And that's the main thing, guys. And and that's why we have this program and why coders, it's a specialized thing, because who would know that you needed an administration code? I mean, who knows that? Nobody but coders. Nobody but people that do this job all the time.
And you only need an administration code when it's medicine. Everything else is coded for the procedure or the stuff like that.
It depends on what it is. It depends, like, I'm trying to think of another example where there's something that has like an add-on code. And I can't, of course, I'm going blank, put on the spot. But it depends on, like, your CPTs are all going to be procedures, things that are done to the patient, for the patient, on the patient, things like that, right? So you're going to, and pathology and laboratory in the medicine section are kind of, your medicine is what you're giving to the patient, right? And you'll notice that there are cases where they give Tylenol in the office and things like that, but for most of this stuff, that's not included in your codes, right? Prescriptions and things like that are separate. But there are codes for things that they give in the office or in the hospital or during surgery and things like that. And those are the ones that are included in your CPT manuals. Okay. And stuff like administration of the flu shot or a vitamin shot or something like that, they're probably all going to have, you know, maybe with a vitamin shot, you might not have to use an administration code because it's built into the code for that vitamin or that whatever it is. It really depends. And that's why, unfortunately, that's why they have those paragraphs upon paragraphs of guidelines to explain all that and spell all that out for each procedure, each code sometimes. Fair amount of reading. But here's the thing, depending on where you go to work, some of this stuff you may never see. You know, if you go to a cardiologist, if you go to work for a cardiologist, coding and billing for them, what are the chances of you ever seeing an immunization code? Fairly slim, right? Fairly slim. So a lot of the stuff that we learn in the program is general, real general. And once you get into your job position, more than likely you're going to have somebody who's been there longer than you, kind of walking you through things at first. And certain doctors like things coded certain ways, and each office has its own way of running itself. And you kind of got to get into the flow of that. But it really depends what specialty you go to work for or who you go to work for as to what codes you're going to see a lot of. Like Claire that just graduated, she works online for an orthopedist up in like Illinois or Idaho or somewhere. But all she sees is orthopedics codes, you know, knee surgery, shoulder surgeries, splints, casts, stuff like that. She's never has to deal with an immunization, a flu shot, you know, any of that kind of stuff. So she never sees that. So it's really where you go to work is going to depend on the codes that you see the most, that you use the most. And what's really cool is once you start working in your job for a little while, you start to really recognize the codes that you see often, and you'll be able to look at a claim and go blah, 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 and send it on. It'll become second nature to you almost. Yeah. Any other questions or anything about that? About medicine, chapter 26, immunizations, any of that stuff? Nope. Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time today. If y'all don't have anything more from me, that is all I've got for y'all at this time. We are going to pick back up the coding workshops on Tuesday nights, starting this Tuesday at 7 p.m. I will put the I will put the link for that on Remind app that day. And I'm also going to put it on the coding workshops page. You can find it in e-learning on the coding workshops page. If y'all want to come to that. And again, that's a completely optional informal meeting, just if you want to work on your coding. And I think this week we are going to start on ICD-10 though. We did several weeks in CPT. Now we're going to start on ICD-10 and kind of get some of that clarified for you guys that want the clarification before we get there. But if that's it, y'all have a blessed weekend, and thank you again for your time.
Bye.
Bye.